Hello, and welcome back to our third and last video in the series to the introduction to arrays. In this video, what we're going to be doing is creating an array of objects, and it's going to be a little bit different from what we've done in the past. First, let's review what we've already done. In the past, we had two different ways to create an array. One way was to declare the array type with the little array symbol, give the array a name, and then go ahead and create the array. So my integers is saying, hey, my integers is going to refer to, it's a reference, so it's just referring to an integer array. And now we're actually going to create the array equals a new integer array with 4 elements. There was another way to do it, which was a lot more concise, because then you didn't have to assign all of the values to the array. You could also create an array, so you list the name, the type of the array, so string, and you list the little array symbol. Zoo animals is a word that's referring to a string array, and then we went ahead and created a zoo animals array of size 3 with the elements inside of it. So we ended up creating it with 3 animals, or 3 strings in this case. So now what we're going to do is we're going to be creating an array of objects. Before we get started, let's go ahead and take a look at our game console.java. And I created this class as just game console class, and you'll notice it's got only one variable, one private variable of string type. So type, and I probably shouldn't have used the word type, that could get a little bit confusing, but in this case we're just going to leave it type for now. So the string, the type of game console, so we're talking about like whether it's an Xbox or a PlayStation or a Switch. And we have our constructor, so this.type equals type. For the game console, we have a way to retrieve the type of the game console, and we have a way to set the type of the game console. So now let's go back to our main.java, and before we get started with the array, let's review how we would create an object, so one single object from a game console. So what we would do is we'd say game console, and we would give our game console a name, so maybe my Xbox. So my Xbox is not a game console yet, and this part we didn't really get into too much. The my Xbox variable refers to a game console. In other words, it's just a reference at this point. It's not an actual object yet. It's not an instance of the game console. To make it an instance, we'd have to say my Xbox equals new game console, and then give it a type. Xbox 1, whatever. So now we've actually created an instance, new game console type of Xbox One. This creates an instance of the game console, and it sets it equal to the reference. So it's a little bit tricky. There's a reason they do this. We're going to see that a little bit more when we get to inheritance. But for right now, and we'll talk about inheritance later, for right now, all you need to know is, hey, this word reserves the name or references the name to game console, and when you go Xbox equals new game console and you give it a type, you're actually creating an instance of the game console. So this is actually like the physical game console. This is just saying, hey, I have a game console, and I'm going to call it my Xbox, but I don't actually have it yet until I create it right here. So I know, a little bit tricky. You don't really have to know too much about that at this point. We're going to get more into this as we go. For right now, just know that. So why is that important when it comes to arrays? Well, we create arrays just like we were of objects, or of game consoles in this case, just like we created arrays of integers. This is the type integer. So we're going to create an integer array, give it a name, and then instantiate it, or create an instance of the array. Same way here, we come down, we say, okay, I'm going to create a game console array. In other words, I'm going to create a list of several game consoles. Game console, and then you go like this. There you go. So I'm saying I have an array that's going to contain game console objects, and I'm going to give it a name. So what name I'm going to call it? My consoles. Let's do that. So right now, my consoles refers to an array of game consoles. So it's referring to a list. My console aren't the actual physical consoles. They are not instances of any objects. They just refer to game console array. Now I can go ahead and create an instance of that array by saying this, equals new game console, and let's make it of size 3. So when I do this, my consoles is not actually any consoles at all. My consoles is an array object. It's just a list, an empty list as it were, of sorts, of game console references. And it's a little bit tricky. Let me show you. We haven't actually created any new game consoles. What we've done is we've created a new game console list. It's like a list of names that talk about game consoles but aren't the actual objects themselves. So what we're going to do is we're going to now have to create instances of each one of those, except each one does not have its own name. Like the first game console on my list is actually this, my consoles 0. My console 0 is the first console, and I'm going to say, hey, it's equal to a new game console, and in this case, it's going to be an Xbox. So my first console in my consoles list is going to be a game console object. I've instantiated it, and it's going to be of the type Xbox. I can do the same thing for the rest of the objects in the list. My consoles 1 equals new game console, and this type is going to be PS4. And let's just go ahead and copy this statement and paste it, because we're just going to do the exact same thing again. Oops. And let's call this one the Switch. Okay, so now what we've done with this code, is we've instantiated 3 different game consoles. I've created a Xbox game console object, I've created a PS4 game console object, and I've created a Switch games console object. 3 different objects that are stored in a game consoles array. So now if I want to access any of the objects in my array, I can do this. I can say system.out.println my first game console in my consoles list is a, and then we can say my consoles 0 dot get type. So notice I'm not saying is equal to or plus my console 0, because that's just the referring to the object. My console 0 refers to the object. Dot get type will return the actual type of that object. Let's go ahead and print it. And remember, it's going to run through all the other code up above. And the last thing we should see is my first game console on my consoles list is a Xbox. And that's pretty much it for this video. Just showing you how to create an array of objects. In the next video, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the game we've been working on, and we're going to be creating lists of, or rather arrays of, asteroids. We can have multiple asteroids falling down the screen at one time. And we're going to use a for loop to create multiple asteroids at once. It's going to be a lot of fun. I look forward to seeing you in the very next video.